Hey, Redeemer fam. Today, I want to talk a little bit about government stuff. Pretty much everybody that I know is worried about the government right now. And there are different varieties of worry about the government. There's what we might call Fox News kind of worry about the government, which tends to zoom in on the current Speaker of the House and her political party. There's what we might call a CNN kind of worry about the government, which tends to zoom in on our current president and his political party. There's also what we might call a YouTube kind of worry about the government, which tends to focus on theories about conspiracies, about global influencers and unelected officials. And I think one of the reasons that we keep getting drawn into these kinds of worries about the government is because we have this nagging fear that things are out of our control. And the bad news is that if we're honest about the situation, so much of this stuff is beyond our personal control. But in seasons like this, it is so good to know and to rest in it and to believe it that these things are not beyond God's control, that he really does have the whole wide world in his hands. Think about the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah lived in a very tumultuous time. There were leaders kind of turning over. There was this threat of this other nation, and it looked like their army was poised to come in and clobber his kingdom. There were a lot of fears, a lot of anxieties going on in his day. And Isaiah was involved in these things. He was an advisor to kings. He spoke about issues of social and economic justice. Isaiah was involved in this stuff, and yet Isaiah portrays for us, he spoke so powerfully about our God and our Creator and our Redeemer, who really does hold all the nations of the earth right in the palm of his hands. It's not even like God is trying with both his hands to keep it all held together and he's just barely got it. No, he's got the whole world just right there in the palm of his hands. Isaiah spoke about how our God causes and our Redeemer causes leaders to rise and leaders to fall. He spoke about how our God and our Redeemer knows the end from the beginning and how at every point along the way, from the beginning to the end, he is at work faithfully bringing about his good redeeming purposes. Go and read Isaiah chapters 40 through 46 and ask yourself this question: is our God overmatched by the things that are going on in our country right now? And as you read and pray over Isaiah 40 through 46, you'll realize no way. There's no way that our God is overmatched by the things that are going on in our world right now. Jesus Christ stood trial before an unjust ruler who was preparing to make a bad decision. And yet Jesus spoke to him with a kind of even keel confidence. And Jesus said, John 19, chapter 11, he said to this ruler, quote, "You would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given you from above." And when we understand the sovereignty of God over every ruler, it can give us a certain ability to navigate choppy waters of unstable times with this even keel kind of confidence that is only found in knowing a sovereign God. Jerry Bridges wrote a book called Trusting God Even When Life Hurts. And a number of years ago, in a season when I was constantly losing sleep because of anxiety in my life, I just went through and I wrote out some things that I needed to remember that were true every single day, and some things that I needed to pray over every single day. And then at the bottom of it, I put this one quote from Jerry Bridges that reminded me about the importance of faith in our sovereign God. Jerry Bridges says, "God is sovereign whether we believe it or not. Our belief does not make it so. But," Jerry Bridges continues, "the comfort God intends for us to derive from his sovereignty is dependent upon our believing." You see, worrisome times call for extraordinary faith in our sovereign God. Now, I'm not suggesting that as Christians, we just go and bury our heads in the sand and don't care. Like Isaiah, we should care. We should stay engaged. But as we seek to care and as we seek to stay engaged, the first and best thing that we can do is we can bring all of our worries and concerns to our sovereign God, and we can leave them there in his faithful and trustworthy hands. And as we do that, and as we go and we take our concerns about specific leaders, 1 Timothy chapter 2 calls us to pray for leaders and all who are in positions of authority. It calls us to go and take our concerns about them to the Lord. As we do that, the result is not that we don't care anymore and we forget about things that are going on, but the result rather is that we're enabled to engage with these things with a distinctive kind of peace of heart, with a distinctive kind of presence of mind, with a little less anxiety, a little less panic, a little more genuine concern for other people and their well-being, even in an age when almost every media outlet is seeking to stir up more and more fears. So for some of us, walking with that kind of even keel confidence in our sovereign God, it may need to begin with watching the news a little less or listening to our podcasts a little less, not at all, but a little less, so that we have more time to invest thinking about what's true about God and considering his ways. Much more time spent praying and talking to him about the things that we're concerned about and the things that are going on in our world and our nation right now. Maybe today it all begins with just going for a prayer walk and just kind of beginning right here in this place of recognizing the truth of Psalm 46:10, which says, "Be still and know that I am God, and I will be exalted among the nations."